Alright guys, it's Chatterbox Reviews, coming to you guys with my review for the movie Rainey's Black Bottom. Alright, so this is the fourth film in this series on my channel where I'm looking at the 2021 Oscars contenders. So hopefully getting a chance to look at 9 to 10 films before the Oscars actually air, later in April, right? Somewhere around there, late April. And of course, we're getting the nominations on Monday, March 15th. So that's coming up, and I'm really looking forward to that, of course. And I am also looking forward to it because of the way it'll kind of shape the conversation for these videos as well, for these reviews, and kind of sharing my thoughts and comparing what I kind of thought of the film while, kind of putting that alongside what the Oscars actually voted for and what the film actually received, in terms of nominations. So, yeah, really looking forward to that kind of discussion and having that opportunity with some of these films going forward. And I've taken a look at 3 so far. This will be the 4th one. And I do feel like, yes, these 4 have been, obviously contenders for the Best Picture, but I feel like at least probably the top 3 for Best Picture at this point in time I haven't covered yet. So hopefully, we'll have that opportunity to really go in depth with those films in particular and really talk about their chances, in terms of the Oscars and, whether they will win where they are nominated, that type of thing. So anyways, I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts of the Oscar race in general, but also for this film, right? Rainey's Black Bottom. And this is the first one on Netflix, I believe, that I've seen. And I just think that's a really great thing. If that's maybe the only good thing about this season for the Oscars. But it is a great thing because it's a lot easier to see these movies when they're on streaming services and that kind of stuff. I feel like, in some years, if a film comes out late December, sometimes it doesn't even release in wide theaters by the time the Oscars are on. So, you're kind of catching up after the Oscars have aired already. Right? So, anyways, it is a great kind of experience with the streaming services. I think at least it's a little bit easier, a little bit more accessible this year for sure. So, anyways, let me know your thoughts of the film and maybe also your experience with that stuff as well. Love to discuss with you guys. So, if you enjoyed this review, please like and consider subscribing to the channel. Would really appreciate that as well. But without any further ado, let's get into this one. So, we'll first start off with just a little bit of a recap of what the film is about and that kind of stuff. And then we'll go over to my non-spoiler review. So this is where I won't have any spoilers, anything like that, just kind of my general overall thoughts of the film, kind of my log line, I like to call it. Of what I thought, and maybe my recommendation, that type of thing. And then I will give a spoiler warning and we will go into kind of a in-depth spoiler discussion, where I go into, my thoughts and talk about the ending specifically, that type of stuff, that, you might want to kind of come back to if you haven't seen it yet. And then of course at the end, I'll talk about the Oscars chances and kind of make my prediction as to what kind of things we can see, from this one, in terms of nominations at the Oscars this year. So anyways, with all that being said, let's get into this one. All right. So this movie is directed by George C. Wolfe and written by Ruben Santiago Hudson, and it is, of course, based off the play from August Wilson, and this is the second play that Denzel Washington is producing and adapting into film. So it's kind of an interesting story. Obviously, I'm not going to go too far into it, but Denzel Washington, I think, was basically given the rights by the August Wilson estate to produce and to adapt 10 of his plays, or I guess all of his plays, all 10 of them, into feature-length films. And of course, the first one was Fences, right? And that was, of course, the Best Picture nominee. I haven't seen that film yet, and I really do want to see it now that I've watched this. I think, at least just for context sake and kind of seeing what August Wilson, what his plays were like, how well Fences was adapted, and how that compared to the play material. That type of stuff is definitely something I'm curious about. So definitely might, want to check that one out. But yeah, so this is the second one out of 10. I think the original plan, what Denzel Washington said, was to do one every year for 10 years. But obviously, that hasn't happened. So hopefully, we'll see more of these plays being adapted. I think that's, something to look forward to, seeing Denzel Washington behind these and producing them. So yeah, just an interesting little story there. But Denzel Washington definitely heavily involved in this film and at least kind of the creative process behind its development. So this one stars Chadwick Boseman, Viola Davis, Coleman Domingo, Glynn Turman, Michael Potts, Taylor Page, and Jeremy Shamus. So, and there's a few others, but those are kind of the main ones that I picked out. Of course, there's a couple more. I think there's, of course, the kid, right, or her nephew, right, Rainey's nephew, is also played by an actor who I recognized from a TV show. I know I've seen him before, but I'm forgetting his name. Anyway, so it's kind of a big cast, but these are kind of our main players, if you will, for this one. And of course, the headline, though, is Chadwick Boseman, Viola Davis, right? Those two, of course, in terms of the Oscars, but also just in terms of notoriety, those two are really who lead this film. So the movie is loosely based on true events surrounding the famous blues singer Ma Rainey. So it's pretty much just the true events of her life, and her as a person. The whole rest of this thing is focused on a fictionalized, turbulent recording session between her band, and the white producers / agent type of thing, and it takes place in 1927 Chicago. So that's kind of the premise for this one, if you will. And yeah, so it is kind of loosely based on true events, but it's kind of, I like to kind of refer to it as an alt history. And I'm going to make a lot of comparisons with this film with One Night in Miami, because I think it's just obvious. There's so many comparisons to be made, just starting with that they're both based on plays, of course, right? And I feel like One Night in Miami kind of does that too, in that it's like, these people are real, these events, may have happened, but it is kind of an alt history take on, this event, and maybe this could have happened, right? Kind of that whole thing, and maybe even some wishful thinking in that, and seeing, okay, maybe this could have been the outcome had this and this happened. So that kind of thing is pretty much what plays out in this one as well. So my non-spoiler thoughts. What did I think of this one just overall? So this film seemed to be very promising, going into it, right? Obviously, due to the success of Denzel Washington's first August Wilson adaptation, Fences, as I mentioned, received a Best Picture nomination. Him and it was Viola Davis, right? Got acting nominations, and all that stuff. So very successful film, of course. And then, of course, the overwhelmingly positive attention that it's received from critics, audiences, and various award bodies thus far, in the kind of Oscar season. And of course, this has cemented it as a serious Oscar contender, like a serious Best Picture contender even. And obviously some people I think would say, yes, definitely this is going to be Best Picture. So yeah, obviously going into it, when you know the kind of context, the background of it, that it's an August Wilson adaptation, especially after the first one, and then you get this kind of really, really positive buzz, and you hear it's a contender at the Oscars. I'm sure you guys and everybody, their expectations are going to go higher, right? You're going to have some pretty high expectations going into this one. And I did for sure. So I really did. So, as a result of this, I had really, really high expectations for the film. And going into it, I think maybe I wouldn't have had those expectations, because it is, on Netflix. It's based on a play and all this type of stuff going, around it, for sure. But I think it's that this Oscar conversation and this big kind of, buzz around this film really kind of raised the bar for me. And so I go into this film expecting an Oscar caliber film. And I have to say, it not only didn't live up to those expectations that I had set, which obviously were a little too high for the type of film that they were going for, I think now in hindsight, but it was actually rather disappointing to me. Again, as a film overall, and for what they were going for, it's kind of a different story. But as an Oscar caliber film, as a film that's in the conversation for a Best Picture nomination, I thought it was rather disappointing. So this is kind of my kind of log line now of what I really thought. So while the film features some really impressive performances and great art direction, from costumes to makeup to production design, all the way around, some really fantastic art direction here. It very much fails at transcending its theatrical material and offering a compelling narrative cinematically, right? And again, I don't want to make too many comparisons to One Night in Miami, but you'll recognize, if you do take a look at my thoughts for that film, and I feel like a lot of people kind of shared the same, thoughts as I did. It doesn't really transcend the play material. It's the same type of thing that I had, a problem with One Night in Miami with. So the lack of character development here, the lack of a concrete plot, along with a lot of clunky kind of play-like dialogue, right? Dialogue that works in a play, but not necessarily on the screen in a film like this, right? And all of these things kind of contribute to a rather messy film, which often offers little direction as to where the story is going and why the characters act the way they do. Why are they motivated to act like this? And overall, a lot of the characters just don't have many motivations at all, and the story here is not very significant. And so it really does feel, kind of like a Once Upon a Time in Hollywood maybe, and it's like kind of a hangout movie, right? That's what people were kind of coining that film. And it does seem like that at times. It seems like nothing is really happening, and you don't really know where it's going. Yet here we get, another, long scene of just kind of talking that doesn't support the plot. And so that's exactly what I'm talking about, in terms of this, in that there's very little direction as to where we're going, why the characters are acting the way that they are, where is this development, right? And at times I feel like there's, a big lacking of that, for sure. So as a play simply being filmed, this works pretty well. However, in the context of an Oscar caliber film, it definitely leaves something to be desired, in my opinion. And I really think this could have been adapted better. And by better, I just mean more fitting into a true film, right? Like, I think obviously you have some really good material here as a play, but I think it needed to have a little bit more kind of that true adaptation to the screen, and so we maybe could have avoided things like that clunky dialogue, lack of development, lack of story, and really kind of flesh out things a little bit more and add to this, more than they did. Overall, I think it could have been adapted better. I think the story here is intriguing. I didn't really mention that, but obviously a very intriguing, compelling story here about obviously a really interesting figure in history, especially the blues history. So I think it's kind of a lost opportunity here. It's not all bad, of course, but overall rather disappointing. Kind of a messy film that I think just could have been done better. Anyways, those are my kind of overall thoughts for this one. Now I will give a warning for spoilers, so if you haven't seen the film or you haven't seen all of it yet, maybe come back to this video once you have, we can talk all about the spoilers then. So anyways, here you go is a warning for our spoiler discussion. Alright, so now we'll get into a little bit of discussion around spoilers. So first off, like I do in all these reviews, when I start talking about spoilers territory, I like to highlight the performances. So some really impressive performances in this film, but I do want to preface it with this, in that I think these performances are really impressive. I mean, obviously, Boseman, Viola Davis, two of them, very impressive, very compelling performances here. But I will say, they are mainly stage performances in this film because of the lack of development for their characters, and I mean just obviously the overall way that this film is filmed, right? The direction here, because it really does feel like at times, like, again, I hate to keep going back to this, but One Night in Miami, a lot of those performances, like, yes, Leslie Odom Jr. gives a great performance, same with Kingsley Benadir, but throughout the film, they really do feel like stage performances, right? I don't think you can really compare, even though Chadwick Boseman is as good as he is here, of course, and I'll get to that in a second, but I don't think you can really compare Chadwick Boseman in this film to a Daniel Kaluuya in Judas and the Black Messiah. And you could make any example, right? Like Stephen Young and Minari and Chadwick Boseman here. It just really isn't the same performance. And I feel like you already have, Tony Awards that recognize these types of performances. Now, I'm not saying that, there's nothing cinematic about this performance at all or anything like that, but I just think the writing here, especially, like, some of these monologues delivered by Chadwick Boseman specifically, this is a great example, is, like, yes, they are really, really great, and Boseman really goes for it, really gives it his all, and you can really tell, I mean, he's really acting his ass off in this film, but those monologues seem so unnatural, and maybe I'll get to this in my discussion about the script and the writing, but some of these feel so unnatural and just so lacking of any kind of development or motivation here, that it's really kind of hard to connect to some of these performances and some of these moments, as kind of a viewer. So I don't know. I'm kind of torn. Like, yes, I recognize these are really great performances, but while compared to other films that are kind of a different type of performance, it's just very hard to me to compare those two. And so maybe while compared to One Night in Miami, yeah, I mean, I think Chadwick Boseman easily gives the best performance. If you can compare it to those types of performances, then obviously, right? All right, so enough of that. Chadwick Boseman, like I've been saying, absolutely amazing in this one, and of course, very unfortunate that he passed. And I did look into this. He passed, I believe it was less than 2 weeks after production finished for this film. Which is insane, absolutely insane. So obviously very tragic there. And obviously I'll get to that in my awards stuff. But that's obviously something that is, at least influential. I think obviously it's not the main reason he's getting all of this awards attention, but it maybe is a contributing factor. I think that's fair to say. Obviously his death, and his work in this film just before his death as well. So anyways, that's obviously something kind of in the background here. But yeah, a really great performance for what he was given and the type of performance he was asked to deliver. He nailed it, really did. And again, I had a lot of problems with his character, but I feel like he really tried to kind of save what things were there and give this character a little bit of development where there really wasn't much. And yeah, really, really great. And it ended up being that he was pretty much our main character in the film, which is something that maybe not everybody would expect going into it. Well, it's named after Rainey, it's all about her, and he ends up being our lead character, or kind of our main focus, our perspective character, right? And so that's kind of an interesting one, and I feel like he does a really good job in that role. So, yeah, for sure. I can't say enough about Chadwick Boseman, in this one for sure. So Viola Davis is also very good. Again, I had a lot of problems with the writing here for her character, and some of her dialogue was just a little bit too clunky for me at times. But, for what she was given, really great job. And obviously I haven't really seen many clips of kind of comparing her to the actual Ma Rainey. I'm not sure if many of those clips even exist. Obviously, but she, just the mannerisms and the way she embodied this character. We've seen a lot of this so far, right? With One Night in Miami, they're all playing real people. In Judas, right? Daniel Kaluuya is playing Fred Hampton, and he did such a good job in embodying that person. And I feel like Viola Davis, whether it's, maybe it is a little bit inaccurate, but at least she's committed, and she really is kind of this whole different person. In this performance. And so I think that deserves a lot of credit. And, obviously the makeup and hair and all that stuff that goes into it, even the gold teeth, that also helps the performance for sure. But yeah, so I think she is good. Again, a lead actress nomination for this type of performance, I'm just not sure if you can really, I don't know. I haven't seen any of the movies, I guess, with the main frontrunners. I haven't seen Nomadland, The Father, or sorry, not The Father, Promising Young Woman, right? I haven't seen any of those yet, so it's hard to compare her to some of those. But just in terms of a lead actress Oscar nomination, it's a little bit weird for me to see this type of performance being recognized for that. But anyways, we'll get to that. But yes, very good with what she's given. Glenn Turman is great in a supporting role here. And I think his character is maybe the best in this case because it doesn't really require a lot of development here, right? He really is just kind of the supporting character who provides a little bit of comedic relief as well. Toledo, right? Is a little bit of that comedic relief in the film, and he does such a great job in this one. He's such a likable guy, and of course you feel very bad for him at the very end of the film, when Levy kills him at the end, which I'll definitely talk about later. But yeah, really great performance, again, for what he's given, for what he's asked to do in this character. He's really great, and maybe one of the most memorable parts of the film. For sure. I think some of those scenes with the band and with Levy and Cutler, really great dynamic there. But then Toledo, Glenn Turman kind of comes in, splits that up. And again, really provides some great comedic relief. And then, yeah, Coleman Domingo, also good in his character as Cutler. Of course, love him from Fear the Walking Dead. Haven't caught up with that show, of course, but I've heard he's great, and I've seen so far that he's really, really good in that show. And I'm really glad that he's getting this opportunity to be in some of these, high caliber films and be recognized, because he is really, really great in this film, again, for what he's asked to do. All right, so let's get past the performances and now into the art direction. I just want to touch on this briefly. Fantastic art direction, and it makes sense, because if you think of this one as a play, it really does make sense that the art direction is this good, because the costumes here are absolutely excellent. Probably going to win, right, costumes at the Oscars, possibly. Just really awesome. Really awesome. Obviously, Rainey's costume, probably one of the best. But even just the suits for the men look really great. Levy's suit, I think, is memorable. Just everybody looks really, really great and really pops. And then obviously the impressive production design. Even the band room looks so cool. Kind of this basement, it looks like a really old room, right? Of course, no one living down there, and it's kind of an abandoned room kind of thing. It just looks really, really great. And then, of course, the upstairs in the studio, right? That's kind of a whole different look of that one. Looks a little bit more fancy, a little bit more appealing. And then you get even the streets, right? Outside when Rainey first arrives. Even all that stuff looks really, really great. And I think does a great job at capturing that period as well. So yeah, I mean, just really, really impressive stuff. And of course, the makeup and hair, mainly for Rainey, is just fantastic. They really transformed Viola Davis here in this role. If you didn't really know what she looked like going into it, I'm sure that it would be hard to recognize at some points, because the makeup is really, really impressive, and her hair, of course, also does that as well, and obviously the men too. I think it was there too, but mainly for Viola Davis as Rainey. And obviously all should be recognized at the Oscars. I think they have a chance at probably winning 2 of these. Makeup and costumes, I think, are definitely ones that they could get, but again, we'll talk about that in a little bit. But yeah, the art direction, really, really great in this one. And again, if you think of this one as a play that's being filmed, yeah, it does make sense that they have really great art direction, because of course that's a main component of stage performances, right? Okay, so one of the main problems with this film is the script, right? I've talked about the writing and my problems with it, so let's get to it. So, similar to One Night in Miami, this screenplay is supposedly adapted from a play, right? And it's supposed to be, the word adapted usually means that, you take the material from the play, and or a book, or obviously it can be different mediums, and you turn it into a screenplay that's different, right? And some of these, I remember for last year with Jojo Rabbit with Taika Waititi, that was an adapted screenplay, but he pretty much only just took a very small idea that was in this one book and then wrote kind of a completely different story around it, but it was still an adapted screenplay. This one is almost the complete opposite on the other side of the spectrum, in that this one still really feels very much like a play. It doesn't really seem that much like a film, or really like a screenplay. And I felt like that was the same with One Night in Miami. There really just wasn't much change in this one, and maybe there is. Like, I'm not exactly familiar, right, with the play, but I think that also comes down to the direction, right? So when you have direction that's basing this to film it like a play, and then the screenplay is also pretty much a play, just in screenplay format, right? That's what you're going to get. That's going to be the final product, and that's kind of what we see here. So I also think that this one is probably less original than One Night in Miami, if that's possible, because at least Miami had some montages and had a little bit of, kind of flair in there that was at least somewhat representative of a film. Right? It kind of felt like a film at times. But this one really didn't. It really didn't even have one scene that couldn't have been done on a stage, that wouldn't really feel right as a play, as a scene in a play, especially the scenes with the band practicing. I mean, that is like literally just a play. They're in one room, they just walk around, and the scenes last very long. There's a lot of monologue delivery. So yeah, I mean, those scenes especially feel like we're actually just watching a play that's being recorded. Now, obviously the direction and all that stuff is a little bit more advanced than what you would see in a stage performance. That goes without saying. But you get what I'm saying, right? Just basically, it really does feel like a play. And one thing I do want to mention is that, Ruben Santiago Hudson, who is the one who adapted the screenplay, this is only his second screenplay that he's ever written. Obviously probably not, but at least for, feature-length films that have been recognized, this is only his second screenplay. And so, I think that definitely does affect this one a little bit, and it's just kind of an interesting one. Same with George C. Wolfe. He's not really, a big-time director. I think this is one of his first feature films that he's directed. So yeah, there's definitely a little bit of something where that kind of makes sense to you, right? After seeing the film, and that, okay, this guy isn't really that experienced with writing screenplays for films, and George C. Wolfe isn't that familiar with directing feature-length films. So you kind of get it once you do a little bit of research into these two guys who are behind it, and you really kind of see what approach they were going for, right? Which is filming a play more so than trying to put together a movie. So that's just off the bat. So because it's written like a play, right, and it's less so a movie, there's really no clear plot here, and there's a very much a lack of character development. We throughout the movie, right, and even towards the end of the movie, we're kind of wondering, like, where is the story going? What is it building up to, right? What is the end result of this film and this story? One Night in Miami, again, is a little bit like that, but at the end there's an arc for a character, and you kind of recognize what the point of the film is and what the message is. This film, not really. I really didn't feel that coming out of this one. We just don't really know what it's building up to, what it's trying to say, and really where this story is even going, right? I guess the only thing I could think of is that the end of the recording session is where this film will end, where this story is going. Is that, oh, well, I guess just the end of the recording session. And that is pretty much where it ends, really. Obviously, Levy aside, it is just the recording session is over, Rainey leaves, and that is how the film ends. Of course, we have the scene with Levy, but that is kind of the whole arc for Rainey, who's supposed to be our titular character here. And so that is just kind of an odd thing. It just kind of meanders all the way through. There's not really a key or, cadence or pacing here going towards an endpoint. It's just kind of a hangout, type of experience. And then they go for kind of the shock at the end, which is Levy's arc, right? And that's the one thing that kind of at least gives, some purpose to the story and to the plot. But I really don't think that ending fit with Levy's character, and I don't think it was something that we were building to. I think it was more of just a shocking scene at the end of the film for him to get so mad about the shoes. Now, of course, it does make a little bit of sense because he is, rejected by the guy who he sold these songs to, right? And so he's obviously angry about that. That's some motivation. And then he's also fired from the band, right, by Rainey. And, he acts like it's not a big deal, but of course, that's a pretty big deal for him as well. And so these type two things really are combined and propel him, right, towards doing that act at the very end in killing Toledo. But even the scene before that, which may give that some support with him getting the knife out on Cutler and kind of, threatening him and that, I felt like that scene was really out of place as well. And there's just a lot of, and I'm going to get to this, but a lot of melodrama here of just escalation out of nowhere, and that end scene is a perfect example of this, where I really had no idea that that's where we were going with this story. There was really no hinting at that. There was no specific development for the character towards that. Even that scene with Cutler, at least I didn't really get the idea that he was actually going to stab him there and actually hurt him. I did not get that impression. And so to go into that last scene with the ending and him killing Toledo was really out of nowhere. And yes, it's a kind of satisfactory ending, right? It's a shocking ending to his character arc, but it didn't really make sense. And that's I not really where I saw this one going. Just from a logical standpoint of his character. And so, yeah, I mean, yes, there's an ending. Yes, there was something they were building to, but I just don't think they built to it very well. And there just wasn't a lot of, kind of motivation, or development there for that character for that scene to happen. Yes, it is shocking for sure. And I was, kind of taken aback by it. Obviously, it's kind of a pivotal scene, but I'm not sure that it really made a lot of sense, and it definitely did not hit as hard as it could have had they worked on that throughout the film, throughout that story, and built up to that big scene and built some tension of us, okay, I'm looking forward to how this one's going to end between Toledo and Levy and or Levy and the rest of the band, and what's going to happen here, right? And instead, it's just Toledo steps on a shoe and this whole thing kind of balloons out of nowhere. So, yeah. And then, of course, the melodrama in this one, the over-the-top caricature-style characters here, they fit a play, but not really this type of film, right? And again, it just could have been adapted better, I think. And this is especially where this happens, because this melodrama, right, like these scenes between the band members, stuff just starts out of nowhere, out of nothing. Like, these are just little comments that somebody makes, and then Levy overreacts, Cutler overreacts, Toledo over. So it's all this overreacting, and these characters just acting over the top, and this type of stuff, which again fits a play. These are typical characters that are in a play and that work well in plays and that type of stage performance medium. Where there's not a lot of action, right? So you need to kind of create this action, to create this tension and drama between characters, in that type of way. And again, I think it is a really good play from what I have seen in the film, certainly. But I just don't know that it fit this type of film where they're trying to go more dramatic and more serious and this type of thing. I just didn't feel like it really fit a lot of the time. And some of the dialogue was good. I did say it was kind of clunky dialogue at times, but I feel like most of it was good. But one thing I noticed is it just didn't really seem that realistic. I didn't really seem, to fit the period that well that they were depicting. And so, again, this is something I had a problem with One Night in Miami as well, in that the dialogue was kind of modern, yet the story and all the costumes and on the set and everything is set in a different period. So, and it was fine, right? Again, if that's their approach they were going for, I just am not sure that it was my favorite. But yeah, some of the dialogue was good. I will give it that. Some of the comedy did land, I think. I think that was a good part of the film. And, though, again, right, with that dialogue being a little unrealistic, it kind of takes you out of it at times, or at least took me out of it, and that was kind of a problem for me too. So yeah, the melodrama, kind of this over-the-top reaction to everything with this writing, is definitely a problem in terms of this film, and trying to play it as a drama for this whole story to come together. It just really hurt it at times, for sure. So those were kind of my main problems with this script, though basically it all is just summarized by, this is a play that, it basically is a screenplay that's based off the play, heavily based off the play. There hasn't been many changes, and so it just doesn't adapt very well to a film. Right, that's kind of the overall thing. So yeah, it feels like a great play. I will say that. Of course, I've kind of said that before, but I really I'd be interested to see this and how it is as a play, and the similarities here between this screenplay and the actual original play by August Wilson. Though I think George C. Wolfe, I think his direction here was really just that, to film a play. And I think that's fine. I just think a different approach may have been a little bit better for this story, for this material that's presented by August Wilson. And I just think it would have been a little bit more impressive here, to kind of be able to put together an actual film with this type of material, rather than filming a play and taking that approach. But again, if that's what George C. Wolfe was going for, he did a good job here, right? So it's a little hard to judge and criticize if that's really the approach he was going for, is to simply make a play, film a play, and turn it into a movie with a little bit more of a higher budget and this type of stuff. That's fine, right? And if that was his approach, he did a good job. But to me, I would have liked to see a kind of a more normal film, especially if it's in the conversation for the Oscars. That's kind of what I expected going into this one. So in any other year, probably this one, of course, wouldn't be in the conversation for Oscars, maybe performance-wise, but as a film, right, it wouldn't be. And so that's kind of where we are for this year. So anyways, those are all my thoughts. Probably repeated myself a little bit there, but yeah, so those are kind of my overall thoughts, with a little bit of spoilers there about the ending. So now let's end off quickly with just talking about the Oscar chances for this one, kind of my predictions as to what it might get here at the nominations in just a couple days. So this most likely gets Best Picture. I think there is a world where it doesn't, but it's very, very unlikely. I think it definitely does get Best Picture. I don't think it deserves it, even in this year. I just don't think it does, but I think it will get that. It will get Adapted Screenplay, I think that's for sure, which again, I disagree with, because I think the screenplay is not very good, especially for, in the context of a movie. So yeah, but it will get Adapted Screenplay. Definitely Lead Actor and Lead Actress, which I can, kind of argue on and say, well, is it really a movie performance? Is it more of a stage performance? But either way, really great performances from Chadwick Boseman and Viola Davis. And Chadwick Boseman's probably going to win Lead Actor. And of course, obviously his death has something to do with this one, but I don't think it's the main reason. I think his performance obviously is amazing in this one, as I've touched on. And so I think he is going to win Lead Actor. So not only a nomination, but he's going to win for that one for sure. And Viola Davis, I think, is going to get nominated as well. Even though I think she deserves it a little bit less, but I think she's still deserving of that one. So, costumes, makeup, and production design are all definite nominations for this film. If nothing else, I think they fully deserve these three, and I think they'll probably win two of these. Costumes and makeup, I think they'll win. Production design might go to Mank or something like that, but we'll see where it goes. But yeah, probably those three are locks from Rainey for sure. So that would put them at about 6 or 7 nominations here, which is pretty impressive, really impressive. So to me, I would probably put in, maybe 4 or 5, but it's that's what it is. I think it's going to get 6 or 7. It's not going to get director. I think George C. Wolfe is kind of falling out of that conversation for sure at this point. So that's not something to look for. But yeah, so those kind of 6 or 7 outside of director are kind of the focus, I think, for this one. In terms of my own kind of thoughts of what I would like to see, outside of the kind of prediction wise, is I think Glenn Turman deserves a nomination. I don't think he'll get it, of course. Maybe, but it's unlikely. But I think he was really great, especially with the stuff that he was given, with the character that he was asked to play, and especially the comedic relief and that type of kind of approach that he was asked to take for this film, he did a fantastic job in that character, giving that type of performance. So I think, you definitely have to recognize Glenn Turman in this one. And, I think he is deserving of a supporting actor nomination. But again, I just don't think he'll get it. So that's kind of it. I mean, I think Coleman Domingo, some people talked about him in supporting actor. Perhaps, right? Maybe I could see that. That could definitely be something, but again, probably unlikely. Probably just the two, lead actor, lead actress for this one. So anyways, those are kind of my thoughts on its chances at the Oscars. Right, I think at least 5 are locked in, and I think 6 or 7 is probably what's going to happen there. So anyways, love to hear your guys' thoughts on the predictions and what you think this one might get, and just the overall Oscar race in general. Would really, really like to discuss that with you guys, of course. But anyways, those are just about all my thoughts for Rainey's Black Bottom. Thank you guys so much for watching this one, and yeah, love to hear your guys' thoughts on this film as well. What did you think of it? What was your experience watching it? And all that stuff. So next week or in the next few days, hopefully, I'll be checking out, I think, either Promising Young Woman or News of the World. One of the two. So we'll hopefully get to one of those before the nominations. Maybe we'll have to see. When we get to that one. But that's what's coming next. Looking forward to those. So, anyways, guys, again, thank you guys so much for watching this one, and we'll see you then in my next review.
Way down south in Alabama, I got a friend they call Dancing Sammy, who's crazy about all the latest dances.